September 1945. The guns of Europe had fallen silent, and the smoke of war drifted into memory. Across the battle-scarred continent, the wreckage of steel lay rusting in open fields, charred remains of a war that had consumed an entire generation. In towns and forests, among the craters and burned-out vehicles, one machine appeared again and again, the American Sherman tank. Some stood proudly in victory parades, others lay broken, their turrets twisted, their armor punctured by German fire. But buried beneath that familiar shell was a secret, one that had quietly saved thousands of lives and reshaped the future of tank warfare. A secret that, until recently, few even knew existed. To most soldiers, the Sherman was both friend and death trap. It was fast, reliable, and easy to produce, but on the battlefield, it earned a cruel nickname, the Ronson, because it lit up every time. A single hit from a German Panther or Tiger's gun could turn the tank into a rolling inferno. Inside, the ammunition racks would ignite like fireworks, and the 5 men trapped within had seconds before the tank erupted. Veterans remembered the smell of burning fuel, the screams of comrades they couldn't save, and the terrifying realization that their armor was often their coffin. The Sherman's reputation for catastrophic explosions haunted Allied crews more than any enemy did. Yet, as the war drew to a close, something had changed, quietly, but profoundly. In the final months of battle, reports began circulating among Allied units: Shermans were being hit and not catching fire. Crews were escaping. Tanks were surviving. German gunners noticed too, their shots, once so devastating, now often failed to ignite the American machines. Rumors spread across the front lines: had the Americans found a way to stop their tanks from burning? Behind that mystery lay a breakthrough so simple, yet so ingenious, that it turned despair into survival, and fear into confidence. From the deserts of North Africa to the hedgerows of Normandy, the Sherman's greatest enemy wasn't just the German 88, it was its own ammunition. Early models of the tank stored hundreds of shells along the hull and turret ring, often without sufficient protection. When an armor-piercing round pierced the side, it didn't have to kill the crew directly. The sparks, heat, and fragments it sent flying would strike the exposed shells, igniting the propellant, and within seconds, the entire tank would detonate. Survivors called it brewing up. To see a Sherman hit was to watch it become a funeral pyre in moments. American commanders knew the statistics were horrifying. In 1942 and 1943, up to 60% of Sherman penetrations resulted in deadly fires. Crews, terrified of being trapped alive, sometimes rode into battle with open hatches, ready to leap out at the first sign of smoke. Some even removed extra shells to lessen the risk, sacrificing firepower just to feel safer. Engineers and tank crews sent desperate reports up the chain of command, begging for a solution. But the answer wasn't more armor, that would make the tank too heavy, it had to be something smarter. That solution came from a small group of ordnance engineers who dared to think differently. They realized the key wasn't preventing hits, it was stopping the fire that followed. If they could somehow keep the ammunition cool, sealed, and insulated even after a shell impact, they could stop the chain reaction. The idea sounded absurd at first, to use water as a defense inside a tank. But through countless experiments and battlefield studies, the concept began to take shape. What if the shells could be stored inside compartments surrounded by liquid, a cooling jacket that could absorb the shock and prevent ignition? It was a gamble, but one that would soon pay off. By late 1943, American engineers had begun to redesign the Sherman's interior from the ground up. The result was a revolutionary system known as wet ammunition stowage. Instead of keeping shells along the hull walls, where they were most exposed, they were moved to the floor of the tank, each stored inside a sealed, water-lined compartment. These compartments were filled with a glycol water mixture, designed to absorb heat and smother any potential flame. It was an elegant solution. If the tank was hit, the surrounding liquid would instantly cool and suppress the burning powder before it could ignite. The innovation transformed how the Sherman fought. Engineers called it the W system, the W standing for wet. Newer models like the M4A1, 76W and M4A3, 76W rolled out of American factories carrying not only improved guns but this life-saving design. It didn't make the tank invincible, but it gave its crews something far more precious: time. Time to escape, to fight back, and to live. The difference was immediately noticed on the front lines. Reports showed that the chances of a Sherman catching fire after a penetration dropped from over 60% to less than 15%. For tank crews, that meant hope. But introducing this system wasn't easy. It required retraining mechanics, redesigning factory layouts, and retooling production lines. Many commanders were skeptical. Could something as simple as wet ammo really make a difference in the chaos of war? Yet the data spoke for itself. Soldiers began to trust their machines again. They called the new models the lucky ones. And while most of the world was focused on larger weapons and deadlier armor, a quiet revolution was taking place, one built not on destruction, but on preservation. When Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy in June 1944, hundreds of Shermans led the charge. Among them were the first tanks equipped with the new wet stowage system. As the days turned into weeks of brutal fighting, tank crews noticed the difference. When German shells struck, the familiar fireball didn't always follow. Sometimes the shell punched through and stopped. Sometimes the tank smoked, but didn't explode. And often, the crew managed to climb out alive. It was the beginning of a quiet, life-saving transformation across the Western Front. Veterans would later recall moments when the new design made the difference between death and survival. One crew near St. Lo took a direct hit from a Panther gun. The impact killed the driver, but the tank didn't ignite. The others escaped through the turret hatch, shaken, but alive. Another report described a Sherman that took 2 hits and still fought on. The wet ammo compartments had done their job, absorbing enough heat to prevent ignition. For the first time, American tankers could believe that their steel chariots might actually protect them. The Germans were puzzled. Their gunners complained that the Americans' tanks no longer burned like before. Captured reports mentioned the strange waterline compartments found inside wrecked Shermans. What was this trick? Had the Allies found some kind of chemical armor? The truth was far simpler, and far more ingenious. By choosing to fight fire with water, the Americans had changed the balance of survival in tank warfare. And in doing so, they had given their crews something beyond technology: they had restored faith. As the Allies advanced deeper into Germany, the word spread rapidly through tank divisions: the new Shermans were tougher, safer, and more forgiving. Soldiers who once joked bitterly about riding in coffins on tracks now spoke with pride about their machines. In repair depots and forward bases, mechanics explained the mystery to newly arrived crews, showing them the hidden compartments beneath the turret floor, the sealed boxes that sloshed quietly when moved. It seemed so simple that many didn't believe it until they saw the results with their own eyes. Captured German intelligence officers, inspecting wrecked Shermans, were equally stunned. They expected thicker armor, new guns, or some exotic alloy, not water tanks. The simplicity of it baffled them. The Germans, known for their complex engineering, had never imagined such a low-tech, high-impact solution. It was proof that ingenuity wasn't always about adding more, sometimes it was about protecting better. The wet stowage system was eventually documented and studied, influencing post-war designs across the world. From the British Centurion to the American M48, the principle of ammunition protection became standard. For the Americans, though, the reward was already won. By the war's final months, morale among Sherman crews was higher than ever. They knew that their chances of surviving a hit were far greater than before, and that faith made them fight harder. In the cold forests of the Ardennes and the bombed streets of Cologne, the Sherman rolled forward, no longer just a weapon, but a survivor's machine. The wet ammo system didn't just change tanks, it changed the psychology of the men inside them. When the war ended, many of those same tank crews returned home, to farms, factories, and small towns scattered across America. Few ever spoke about the wet stowage system, and fewer still realized how revolutionary it had been. But historians looking back would come to understand its impact. The Sherman's secret wasn't in its gun or armor, it was in its quiet defiance of destruction. It represented a shift in warfare itself, from brute strength to intelligent survival. In a world that had burned for 6 years, the idea of fighting smarter, not harder, carried deep meaning. The lesson of the wet ammo Sherman lived on. Modern tanks, from the Abrams to the Leopard, use armored and insulated ammunition compartments, direct descendants of that 1944 breakthrough. The principle remains the same: protect the crew first. A tank can be rebuilt, but a man's life cannot. And that philosophy, born in the desperate fires of World War II, continues to define armored warfare to this day. As history fades into memory, one truth endures: the Sherman's greatest weapon wasn't its gun, nor its speed, but its heart, the engineers, soldiers, and innovators who refused to accept death as inevitable. In a war that took millions, they found a way to save thousands. And that is the real secret of the Sherman, not a machine built for war, but a machine rebuilt for life. The story of the Sherman's secret isn't just about metal and machinery. It's about courage, innovation, and the will to protect life even in the darkest days of war. If stories like this move you, if you believe that even in war, humanity can shine through, then make sure to subscribe to World War II Archive for more untold stories of valor, sacrifice, and hope. And before you go, don't miss our latest video, How the US Soldiers Built Schools in Germany. Tap the end screen to watch it now, and continue the journey through the moments that rebuilt a broken world, one act of compassion at a time.